Distilled water is water that has been processed very similarly to the natural water cycle of our planet. What happens in a distiller is water is heated to a boiling point where steam is produced. The steam travels upward into a condensating chamber where it is cooled, and then the water returns to a separate vessel or a separate container. By boiling the water, creating the steam, or I should say by evaporating the water, one process of which is by boiling it. By evaporating the water and then condensating it and allowing it to return, the dissolved solids in the water are left behind. A reverse osmosis filter that we talked about earlier removes 90 to 95% of dissolved solids. A distillation unit removes 95 to 99% of the dissolved solids. This is the natural phenomenon that occurs in the recycling of moisture on our planet. It is known that 99.999% of all water ever found on planet Earth is still here, with the exception of the minute amounts that we've sent up into space and so on and so forth. The rest of the water is constantly recycled on this planet by evaporation, condensation, rainfall, and return. The distillation unit does the same thing in a smaller process, obviously in a smaller facility. The way it accelerates the evaporation is by boiling the water. So the good news is you remove not 90 to 95% of the dissolved solids like a reverse osmosis, but even more, 95 to 99% of the dissolved solids. So what you have is what has always been referred to in the plumbing industry as raw water. Unfortunately, raw water isn't a desirable marketing term for water, so that is currently referred to as pure or purified water. And that is water that contains virtually no dissolved solids. So the good news is contaminants are removed. The bad news is the pH of that water is lowered even more than it is in a reverse osmosis product or process. So the water is highly acidic. Again, very good for use in steam irons or room humidifiers where no residue is, where you want the absence of residue when water evaporates, but extremely unhealthy water for prolonged use with either plants or animals. Feed a plant distilled water and it will die since it does not contain any of the minerals the plant needs for nutrition. The same thing will happen eventually if you feed it in significant quantities to animals, including humans. Now, I should hasten to point out there are some medical conditions where medical experts will recommend that a human consume distilled water for purposes of deliberately lowering their bodily fluids pH. But for a normal, healthy person, drinking or consuming distilled water is absolutely unhealthy and not desired.